All right. We're glad everybody could be here this evening. It's good to see everyone. The topic I was assigned was role reversal. I thought, okay, what exactly is that? You want to guess? It's where you start taking care of your parents and the parents are needing your help. A little ironic that I was assigned this. But in the book, the writer spent a lot of time talking about loneliness. And then, lo and behold, I don't know if you saw the news yesterday of the Surgeon General's announcement about loneliness. I see a few heads nodding. And so we'll get into what the Surgeon General has to say about the loneliness epidemic we have in America. So we'll get to that in just a minute. How about this phrase, survival of the fittest? Does anybody know where that came from? Darwin. Who? Caesar? Okay, so Darwin, when he wrote On the Origin of the Species in 1859, he used this phrase, survival of the fittest. But something I learned this week, it doesn't mean what you think it means. Unless you read the book, you know. It's more about natural selection. It's misunderstood about the word fittest. It doesn't mean the healthiest, the strongest. It's commonly confused with physical fitness, but you go through the nursing home, the retirement centers, and do you see strong, healthy people in those places? Not very often. It originally referred to the reproductive rate. So in order for a species to survive, they had to be productive and reproductive in order to survive. And so that's what survival of the fittest refers to. So let's get to the seniors. This process of growing old, if your parents, grandparents reach the age of 70 and 80, they're physically and emotionally strong individuals to survive that long, to get that far. The productiveness of seniors. I'm sure you've heard stories of how successful certain seniors were once they get old. Agatha Christie, who was that? A writer. She was still publishing books in her 80s. She was still writing and publishing. Arthur Fiedler. Close. Conductor. There you go. He was a conductor of the Boston Pops for 50 years. At the age of 82, he said, I think I'm going to cut back and do fewer performances than I've been doing. So he went from doing 194 performances a year to just 164 productions per year. A 15% cutback. But he worked into his 80s. So yeah, he was over the Boston Pops from 1930 till 1980. Didn't know if that picture would come out. What is this?
Sistine Chapel.
The Sistine Chapel. Very good. And who painted it? Michelangelo. How old was he when he painted it? 76? He started at age 76. And he finished when he was 79. Do you reckon he ever heard his kids say, stay off that ladder? I can't imagine a 79-year-old man up there on scaffolding, painting the ceiling. That's just... I'm sorry?
He was laying on his back.
Laying down on the scaffolding to paint. Probably napping. That's why it took him 3 years. Old age. Betty Davis said, old age is not for sissies. She made several comments that are along that variation. As people get older, you have ailments, new aches, pains. You wake up and go, what did I do? About 6 months ago, I woke up and I had this horrible pain in my right elbow. It was swollen and I couldn't put it on the table. I couldn't put it on an armrest or anything. I have bursitis in my elbow. You know what you do for bursitis? They said, ice it and rest it. Rest your dominant arm. Let me know how that works out. It still has flare-ups occasionally. And just self-closing doors will bump it occasionally. And oh, boy, howdy. Just to get to enjoy that pain a little bit longer. Some pains may be minor to the younger people, but it's more significant to the older people. You know, oh, is that a leg cramp or is that a blood clot? Their favorite topics. And this is out of the book. I'm not making this up. This is not my personal experience exactly. Bowel movements, UTI, sight, hearing aids, dentures, aching joints, balance, broken hip and leg. And that's quite common, and we'll get to why that happens to older people a little bit later on. But Rhonda's mom broke her hip. I have an uncle that broke his femur, and I have a second cousin that broke his femur. One fell off of a ladder. He was up doing something on the roof. I think he was cleaning out his gutters. They have limitation of activity. They just can't do as much as they used to. They want to. My parents were wanting to go on the mission trip. I thought, oh my. I said, do you have any idea how much walking you're going to have to do? I said, you're going to get off the plane and there's going to be heat and humidity, and shame on me for talking them out of it. But I don't think it would have been good for any of us. Older people have deteriorating health. Physical and emotional health is not something that's going to improve with age. We're not going to get any better. We're not getting any younger. Yours and theirs is going to deteriorate. I've fallen and can't get up. I can't help you. Remembering things. This is funny. And is it the next one? No. They struggle with multitasking. And this happened to me last night. Rhonda, she had her dinner ready when she got home from school. I had made chicken fajitas, and so she's ready to eat right now. Mom and Dad ate a late lunch, so they weren't ready to eat. So anyway, she's fixing them, and I was on my way to the garage to take some recycling, and I said, "Do you want the hot sauce?" And she said, "Yes," because there's a refrigerator in the garage that has the big bottle of hot sauce, salsa. And so I went out there and tossed my stuff in the recycle, and I came back in. She saw me come in empty-handed, and so she went and got her salsa. At ATF, I heard several people say, "Man, I know that, I recognize that face, but I can't think of their name. I should know it, but I can't think of who it is." Has that happened to y'all?
I'm in my 30s.
I feel better. I tell people that gets better when you get older. I'm sorry?
Just trying to get a conversation going with them, like, "Hey, how you doing? How's the family?"
Yeah.
Sooner or later, somebody will spit out their name.
Accepting the fact that all of us are getting older will help us to set realistic goals. I didn't think going on a mission trip was a realistic goal for them. So anyway, I talked them out of it. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. We want to go do things, but we just don't have that ability anymore. The writer of the book said their ability to read, play, exercise were all reduced. Many have chronic illnesses. Of those close to 65, half of the men and 40% of the women live with activity limitation. In 2012, and this is 24% of all people, not just the elderly, 24% of all people in the U.S. were using a mobility device, a cane, a wheelchair, a scooter, The Mayo Clinic says, as you get older, you have hardening of the arteries, which causes the heart to work harder, which causes hypertension and other diseases, other problems. Your bones, the size and density shrink, and they're susceptible to fractures. Your muscles, you lose strength, endurance, flexibility, which affects your coordination, stability, and balance. So that's why they fall and break their hips and their legs. The brain, forgetting familiar names and can't multitask. So the Mayo Clinic also said to fix a lot of this, or to delay the onset of a lot of this, eat a healthy diet, get exercise, rest, and don't smoke. Quit smoking. As far as the brain, they said social activities will help a lot with that, the interaction. Economic deprivation. In addition to physical and emotional health deteriorating, and now you've got this financial issue hanging over your head. Maybe they have limited savings. They can't afford to do the things they used to do when they were working. Forced retirement. As a controller, nowadays, all controllers have a mandatory retirement age of 56. But they're so short-handed right now that you could fill out paperwork and get a waiver, and a guy that's my age is still working aircraft. But the people who, before they passed that law saying that you had a mandatory retirement age of 56, there was a guy at DFW that was 72 years old, and he was still working traffic. And I talked to a controller from down there. I said, so how does that work when he gets ready to get on position? He said, oh, we have to open every position and all the handoff positions and everything to help him get through it. He kind of lacked the ability, but he was still hanging on. Many of the seniors don't have the ability to supplement their income. Other than, hi, welcome to Walmart, they may struggle finding things to do. The average Social Security, $1,827 per month. That doesn't cover very many medical expenses. The writer of the book said, change has a different meaning than it did when you were younger. It's not a novelty or a time for growth. It means, for the seniors, it means part of their world has crumbled and has been destroyed because you're taking away a freedom or something. They've lost something. Don't confuse what's best for them with what's best for us. Staying functional. Help them to remain independent as long as they can. And they want their independence. They don't want to have to be told what to do and where to go and when to go. Use resources available. There are lots of community resources. The Y in Edmond has a big seniors thing. There's several of them around town. Help them discover others their own age. And I think that's been a blessing to them coming to North MacArthur. They've met several new friends. Now, they lived in the same house in Owasso for 40 years. And for them to up and voluntarily move over here, but they said, well, we're going to do it because it's our choice, not because we have to. And so they voluntarily came over and lived with Rhonda and I. And they miss their friends, people they've known for 40 years. So, and we've talked about going over and surprising them on some Sunday mornings. Just show up at worship at Owasso. Again, the writer, Norman Wright, said, putting them in a nursing home should be a last resort. And that's going to come up again because that's one of the seniors' greatest fears, is that they're going to be put into a nursing home and forgotten. Include them in decisions. Meal planning.
They don't care.
Yeah.
Just feed them.
We've asked them, what are you hungry for? What would you like for us to cook next? And I mean, they're happy with just beans, cornbread, and onions. So,
I would throw in there, because my dad's in a nursing home and they know he's independent, they give him like the ability to say, I liked this meal, I didn't like this meal, would you order in special ice cream? So like, because of his age and the fact that he doesn't have a choice and he has to be there, they
That's-
at least give him, they respect him and give him some choices.
that's great. I'm glad to hear that, because I mean, most of the time I think of, they're just like the serving line in MASH, and they're just, here's your mashed potatoes.
They have a wide variety of stuff and he can even order off menu.
Yeah. Now, occasionally, and we try to eat very healthy, but occasionally Dad said, can we have some fried chicken?
Yeah, we don't eat yucky enough for them.
Beginning years ago in Michigan, my granddad was in a nursing home, and I told him I was going to come by and see him. I'm going to stop at McDonald's, and what do you want? He said, well, I want 2 fish sandwiches and 2 coffees. And so I brought him, and they brought him his lunch, and I said, Papa, I brought you lunch. He says, well, yeah, but he said, I'm just going to see what they have to eat. And so he put a lot of ketchup on it. It was meatloaf, and I said, you drowned that with ketchup. How come? He says, that's the only way you can eat
it. Trips. I kind of mentioned that we've talked to them about the idea of going back to Owasso and surprising their friends. So we try to include them in things. Mom's side of the family, they have the first Monday of every month, we go to Batiste, Oklahoma, way down near Hochatown.
Put you down.
And they have a lunch the first Monday, her surviving siblings. And we started trying to do that with Dad's brother, but he's one of them that fell and broke his femur. Equating your duty to them to a parent and child makes them feel less like an adult. And shame on me. I joke usually on Wednesday night and say, oh, well, it's past the kids' bedtime. We need to go. And so we'll go home. Well, I didn't realize that was offensive, but sorry. Senior fears. And this is a list out of the book. I didn't ask Mom and Dad, what are your fears, and come up with this list. Getting sick. Being able to afford to get sick. That's something they fear. Being assaulted. I was a little surprised at that, but we live in a safe area, so I'm comfortable with living in Oklahoma. I would not be comfortable living in New York City or something like that. So,
Are you talking about in public or talking about in like nursing home?
oh, I don't know.
The unfortunate fact is I worked in the nursing home industry, my mother did as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff that goes on in nursing homes is one reason I had to get away from it.
Wow. I hadn't even thought about that. More senior fears. Afraid of falling. They don't want to break a hip or a leg like so many of their friends have. Breaking a bone and it's not able to heal. That's what, when Rhonda's mom broke her hip, yeah, this isn't going to heal. And they did a partial replacement on her hip. They have a fear of losing money. Being abandoned. And you kind of see this a little bit, even right here in Oklahoma. They live hours away, but the child lives here. Said, you know what? I'm going to move you up and we're going to put you in this nursing home so I'll be close by. And that way I'll be able to come and visit you. So anyway, you transplant the parents away from their friends and family that they were near and bring them away from them and put them in a nursing home, and they feel abandoned, left alone.
Jimmy,
Yeah.
one of the great joys of going to the nursing home for worship is that they are so excited to be visited once a month. And when we're there every Sunday,
Yeah.
it is a bigger boost to them than it is to us, just in general.
It really is. If you have some time to spare, go make a friend at a nursing home, and you'll find more friends than than you realize you had. And again, they're
Hugs too. They love hugs.
yeah, they're afraid of being put in a home. You know what their biggest fear is, though? Dying alone. All right, the loneliness epidemic. The Surgeon General came out with a report, released this 81-page report yesterday, and I saw it in the news, and so I went and read about it. But they put out this advisory about the loneliness epidemic in America and how bad it is and how can we address this. They said loneliness is as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's like hunger and thirst. You're hungry, your body tells you, sends you a message, hey, we need to go eat something. You're thirsty, your body says, I need a drink. And when you're lonely, it's telling you that it's missing something that it needs for survival. The cause? People are less engaged in religious activities, in worship, in social groups. The number of single households has doubled in the last 60 years. And this was all worsened by COVID, being isolated and separated. And you're in your house, you're quarantined. So the Surgeon General is calling on businesses, schools, communities, parents to make changes to boost connectedness, to get people involved in doing things. More from the Surgeon General. He said, put down your phone. That's the biggest thing. Technology has exacerbated the loneliness problem. Social media users that spend more than 2 hours per day are twice as likely to feel isolated as people who spent 30 minutes or less. Surgeon General suggests that social media companies roll out protections for children. You know, if they're under a certain age, don't let them have an account. If you do let them have an account, restrict their access. They can only be on this for, 30 minutes. Give them a deadline. There is no substitute for in-person interaction. That's just like coming to church and the fellowship we enjoy. I've always thought as Wednesday night as a little booster shot to get you through the rest of the week. All right, more on loneliness from consumeraffairs.com. 28% of seniors live alone. Loneliness and social isolation from COVID caused a 50% increase in dementia. Other health hazards, risk, strokes increased by 32%. Heart disease increased 29%. Mental health disorders increased 26%. Premature mortality increased 26%.
What's the baseline compared to when? Compared to before COVID?
Yeah. So 60% of the men, 71% of the women say they're more lonely now than they were before COVID. And that was from a CDC survey. Well, the effects of loneliness. It affects every fiber of our being, every aspect of our life. If you're lonely, you don't want to do stuff. I don't feel like getting together with friends. Your hopes, ambitions, dreams, wants, desires, vitality, all of that is missing because you're lonely and you don't want to go do those things. Eating and sleeping. Eating, both extremes. Oh, I'm lonely. I think I'll go eat some comfort food. And we binge on that. Or, yeah, I just don't feel like eating. So you have both extremes. Sleeping. Oh, I can't sleep. Or in the morning, I don't want to get out of bed. What's the point? Obesity and greed are often symptoms of loneliness. And ironically, a loss of weight can be traced to despair and loneliness. So, wow, you look like you gained some weight. Are you lonely? Have you lost weight? Are you lonely? Manifests in aches, imaginary or real. Weak legs, stooped shoulders, melancholy. You've seen people that walk around, they're just sad. They don't want to be involved. They're withdrawn. Keep silent. Loneliness biblically. This verse just kind of jumped out at me this week. Psalm 142:4. Look to the right and see. No one cares about me. I have nowhere to run. No one is concerned about my life. How low did David have to be to write this? Well, what does he mean about the right? Look to the right and see. The right is where the advocate would stand. Look to my right and see. No one cares about me. I have nowhere to run. No one is concerned about my life. Pretty sad. And we'll get there. Started to jump ahead. Loneliness is feeling cut off, being cut off, deserted. Not just being physically alone. Sometimes you want to be alone. Go be by yourself. But that's not really related to loneliness. Emotionally, there's a breakdown in giving and receiving because you're isolated. You're not in communication with others. You're not able to share things with them. So you have that emotional breakdown. And then it's interesting, taking this a little bit out of context, but to read through it in this light. Talking about being lonely. Genesis 2:18, the Lord God said, "It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a companion for him who corresponds to him." So here's my question. Was Jesus ever lonely? During the trials?
40 days and 40 nights.
Yeah. He didn't have that advocate beside him. The apostles deserted him, and he's going through those trials alone. Causes of loneliness. Geographically, hospitals, institutions, far from home. Well, I don't think I put on here. Incarcerated. People in prison. You're separated from friends and family. You're in the hospital, at least they can come visit whenever they want. The prison's not so. Don't they just have one visitation day? Does anybody know? Anybody been in prison? Not that you want to admit. Being away from your friends causes loneliness. I read a statistic that said before COVID, individuals spent an average of 1 hour, 60 minutes with friends every day. But after COVID, the average is down to 20 minutes. We don't spend time with our friends. Missing the climate that they're familiar with. Maybe they've gone to a foreign country. Wow, can you imagine being in a hospital in a foreign country? And even if they speak your language, their culture is so different from our culture. Yeah, I'm thinking of all these funny stories that happened to me. I don't know. When I was in Trinidad, we flew down to the Trinidad, and when we get there, I have this severe earache, and it was funny. They said, "Oh well, we'll take you to the doctor in the morning." Well, one of the girls that had flown down with us, she had a severe stomach ache, and so little background on Trinidad: the population is 50% black, 50% East Indian, and 48% actually, and less than 2% is Caucasian. So here's this Caucasian male and female that walk into the doctor's office. What do you assume? They thought we were married. And so anyway, the doctor examined my ear first, and he's got this big, like a 1.5 gallon jug on his office, on his desk, and he just gets a handful and puts them in a cup and tells me how often to take them, and sends me on, or he says, "Okay, have a seat." And then he asks the girl, "Okay, why are you here?" "Well, I have a stomach ache." And he said, "Okay, take your clothes off." And she looked at me, and I said, "We're not married." He said, "Oh, that's okay." But the funny part of the story is, after he took her over behind the curtain and examined her, he gets his hand in the same jug of pills that he gave me, and he gives her a cup full of those pills. One placebo fixes all of us. Homesickness will cause you to be lonely. "Oh, I just want to go home." Forced into a new routine. Just having to make change. Again, it's part of your past is crumbling and being destroyed because you're having to change to a new system. Being surrounded by people speaking a foreign language. Cultural differences. If you're living abroad and you have a family tradition, we always have this big meal on Thanksgiving and all the family gets together. But if you're abroad and some countries recognize they celebrate a form of Thanksgiving, but it just isn't the same. Rather than turkey, there's no telling what you're going to see on your plate. It was funny, and this will kind of shed some light on some biblical things. Actually, when I was invited to dinner at a family from the East Indian family, I'm expecting everyone to eat. But when we get to the house, "Yeah, come on in," and my partner and I, there's 2 place settings at this dinner table, and they've got like a banquet of food in front of us, but there's only 2 plates. And this is weird. Well, they say, "Yeah, have a seat. Let's eat." And so we sat down, and there's probably 20 people crowded into this small dining room, and they're just standing there watching us eat. That was very awkward. A cultural difference that I had never heard of, ever experienced before. And religious differences. Just even with the Church of Christ, things that, not that it was unbiblical, but, not meeting on Wednesday night, meeting on Tuesday night or Thursday night instead of Wednesday night. Okay, that's odd. In Trinidad, when they serve communion, they serve it at the morning worship. They also serve it at the evening worship to everybody. It's not if you missed it, but here. And they had fresh, hot bread that you would tear off. It was like a tortilla, a name type bread. So it was different down there. Illnesses. Man, you remember seeing the people who were sick and they were in nursing homes and the family couldn't come visit them? They're having to look at them through the window, talk to them on a phone. And I saw one guy had his truck with a bucket, and he's lifting people up, and people are it's like renting a library book, borrowing a library book kind of, okay, I get this time frame to see mom, and so he'd lift his bucket up there and you'd get to have your 10 minutes or whatever to talk to mom. That was a sad time. Losing sight, hearing, or the ability to get around, being bedfast. Boy, that can be so lonely. I went to visit a man this past week. He's bedfast. And I mean, he just lit up. He was so happy to have a visitor. And before I left, his servant heart said, hey, if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know. Tough. Fears that are caused by loneliness. Of course, the impending death. It's just a matter of time now. Pain and suffering. Again, the thought of dying alone. Becoming paralyzed by a stroke. Confined to a nursing home for the rest of their life. Dying in a strange place. Being widowed. Our society is couple-oriented. And so when one of the parents pass away, the other one really feels lost. And I've had relatives that have lost their spouse, and the spouse that passed away did everything. Went and bought the groceries and just did so much around the house, and the wife's just beside herself because the food doesn't just magically appear. Some adjusting involved. Our shield. There was at least 15 times as you read through the Psalms that talk about God being our shield. Psalms 3:3. But you, Lord, are a shield that protects me. You are my glory and the one who restores me. Norman Wright said that our parents are a shield between us and death. So when the parents die, wait a minute, I don't have that barrier anymore. I don't have that shield of protection. So what does that mean? I'm next. It's my turn. It's just a matter of time. We grow up with this idea that, our parents, they're that shield. And we carry that into adulthood to where they're our protection between us and death.
I just thought of something, when your parents pass away, it's like you have become the adults in the room. There's no more the next level.
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah. I had an aunt and uncle, and then their oldest daughter had all passed away, and the middle daughter, I was kind of jokingly about, well, I guess you're the matriarch of the family now, and she's quite a bit younger than I am. And she said she didn't even want to think about that. Prepare for aging and loss. Keep in contact with others. You can learn from others what they went through, what they are going through, how they're dealing with their loss. Might give you some help, some hints. Read about the changes to come. Have a balanced diet. Stay healthy. Maintain independence. Anticipate the changes and the loss. It's not that we're looking forward to it. We're just trying to prepare ourselves for what's going to happen. Build a life of service to others. And mom and dad, mom especially, has just really plugged herself in, and she sends out 50 cards a month, sometimes more than that. She sent out 90 some this week.
She's always done that, even in Owasso.
Yeah, and sending cards to shut-ins and just to encourage them. We get calls and thank you cards all the time. Thanks for thinking of me. Thanks for remembering me. So, discover your strength and build on them. If it's just sending a card to someone or taking a little time on your lunch break and going and visiting someone, encourage someone any way you can. Psalm 23:6. Surely goodness and faithfulness will pursue me all my days, and I will live in the Lord's house for the rest of my life. That just kind of jumped out at me as I was preparing this week. That and Psalm 142. And I like this translation, the idea that it's not just following me, it's pursuing me. Goodness and faithfulness, mercy, are pursuing me all the days of my life. All right. Uh-oh, you got 5 minutes for you guys to talk. I had so much material and so many slides, I thought, I'm not going to get through this again. Questions, thoughts?
During the pandemic in the hospital, a lot of people died alone.
Yeah.
I was able to go to the hospitals. I remember the first visit I made in the Canadian Valley, a lady that I've known for quite a while. She'd been in the hospital 2 weeks. And so when I went in to see her, she lived out in the west part of the state. She just broke down and cried. She said, "You're the first visitor I've had." So,
Kenny, there's no way to prepare for that.
Yeah.
We can say we are, and we're gonna deal with that next week, but
Well, and even when people have a terminal illness, and yeah, you just, what can you say?
Always catches you off guard.
Yeah.
And the one point you made about the phones and things like that, we're military, so we moved around a lot. And the friends we made through all of that stuff, the phones have actually been really helpful, help those relationships stay
Yeah. I mean,
there.
the technology is great when you're away like that, and you can use FaceTime, whatever, and you can actually see their face and hear their voice, and that's encouraging.
Yeah.
So,
When he deployed, we got to FaceTime, and I think that was the only way we got through it. But, yeah, I mean, I think, like, I've had a few sellers lately who are in nursing homes and going through that process of, selling the home they lived in forever, and it's hard to watch. And but you reminded me, hey, it's time to send them a letter or call them, and and do that. So I think it's important to, if you think of somebody, if somebody comes to mind when we're talking about these classes, just do it.
yeah. And Mom's good about that. She'll write notes, on the bulletin or handout, whatever, and she'll write that down, send them a card for this, and so.
I
her-
don't think anything can prepare you for having to take care of your parent financially and health-wise, and a mind that's struggling. I have to help my dad with a lot of things and trying to wade the waters of not treating him like a child, but letting him talk. And
Yeah. Well, my parents were very blessed, and so they, it's not a financial burden or anything. We've enjoyed having them here and not 2 hours away. So,
I think technology has its positives and its negatives in life and with our families. The positive side, it allows us to communicate. I mean, as per the old phone on the wall, you couldn't, FaceTime or nothing like that. But nowadays, I mean, you're able to FaceTime with your family. Like, I've got nieces and nephews that live in Ohio, and from time to time I'll FaceTime with them. It gives me a chance to see them, see my great nieces and nephews and stuff like that. But so many people spend so much time on their technology, whether it be their phone, their computer, etc., that they don't realize they're losing a lot of time in life with their family.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate fact for me is I lost a lot of time with my parents because they didn't know a lot about technology and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I lived on the road the whole field, and in the end, I lost both of them before I could really spend time.
Well, and you find this kind of happen gradually where even when technology first comes out, when Facebook first came out, and having to help them to understand, help them set up an account and well, they get a new phone. Well, can you set up my phone for me? Can you get this fixed and put my Facebook and everything on there? And so there's a lot of things, even years ago, having to help them with new stuff they didn't quite grasp. All right. Thanks for your attention and your comments, and Wayne will be on for next week.